Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. So this is Krishna Dasa. Today we are going to continue with the 18th chapter. We are going to do 18.7 to 18.13. And before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalake Chakshurum Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः।
Hare Krishna. So I'll play the slokas.
नियतस्य तु सन्न्यासः कर्मणो नोपपद्यते मोहात् तस्य परित्यागस्तामसः परिकीर्तितः दुःखमित्येव यत्कर्म कार्यक्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् स कृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत् कार्यमित्येव यत्कर्म नियतं क्रियते अर्जुन संगं त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव सत्यागः सात्विको मतः न द्वेष्ट्य कुशलं कर्म कुशलेनानुषज्यते त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो मेधावी छिन्न संशयः न हि देहभृता शक्यं त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते अनिष्टमिष्टं मिश्रं च त्रिविधं कर्मणः फलम् भवत्यत्यागिनां प्रेत्य न तु सन्न्यासिनां क्वचित् पञ्चैतानि महाबाहो कारणानि निबोध मे सांख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि सिद्धये सर्वकर्मणाम्.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So,
Hare Krishna Guruji.
yes.
It's Smita Srinivasji who is going to read the translations.
Okay.
Thank you, Smita ji.
Thank you, Guruji. Verse 18.7 Renunciation of prescribed duties is not proper. The abandonment of prescribed duties out of delusion is declared to be in the mode of ignorance, tamasic. Verse 18.8 One who abandons prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort performs renunciation in the mode of passion, rajasic. Such a person does not obtain the true benefits of renunciation. 18.9 O Arjuna, when prescribed duties are performed simply because they ought to be done, abandoning attachment and the desire for results, such renunciation is considered to be in the mode of goodness, sattvic. 18.10 The wise renouncer, filled with the quality of goodness and free from all doubts, neither hates disagreeable work nor is attached to agreeable work. 18.11 It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities completely. Therefore, one who renounces the fruits of action is called a true renouncer. 18.12 The threefold fruits of action, undesirable, desirable, and mixed, accrue after death to those who are not renouncers. But those who renounce the fruits of their actions never experience such results. 18.13 O mighty armed Arjuna, learn from me these 5 factors for the accomplishment of all actions as described in the Sankhya philosophy, which brings an end to all karma. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guru.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you for reading it so nicely. Appreciate that. So let's continue our journey of this glorious chapter. Okay. So in these verses now, Shri Krishna is going deeper. He's going deeper into the concept of true renunciation. He's going to explain it to us. And so what is the goal? The goal is, as you know, right at the beginning, Arjuna was confused. And Arjuna had these questions on what exactly is renunciation. Sannyasa also looks like renunciation. Tyaga also looks like renunciation. Giving up action also looks like renunciation. Not giving action also is like, so he's like, you have to know, explain, I'm confused. So that is Krishna's goal. And he starts by saying that you should never renounce your prescribed duties simply because they are challenging or inconvenient. It is very significant, right? This teaching. Why? Because if we introspect, we will know that that is a common human tendency. All of us have that tendency. The tendency to avoid anything that seems painful, disagreeable, difficult. The first intention, the first thought, the first impulse that comes is, let's avoid it. Correct? So that is why Krishna is going there. Krishna is saying, if you abandon some action, especially if you abandon rightful action, which is your duty, based only on your personal discomfort, not based on whether it is the right thing to do or whether it is not the right thing to do. You are abandoning it or avoiding it only based on your own comfort or discomfort. He says that kind of renunciation is rajasic. Is it making sense? Okay, so what is the key word here? The key word to understand is, we spoke about aversion and attachment, how they are both a problem. So rajasic renunciation is based on aversion. That is what aversion is all about. Aversion means you are avoiding something just because you don't like it, or just because you think it is difficult, just because you think it is disagreeable. It is all based on what you think, what is comfortable to you. So that is a rajasic renunciation. Now, there is a very nice story in the Bhagavata Purana. I thought that is relevant here. So there was a very famous king. His name was Yayati. So a very royal lineage and big king with a huge kingdom and all of that. And his guru was Shukracharya. You all know who Shukracharya was. Shukracharya was a very powerful guru. And he became the revered teacher of Asuras. Shukracharya was such a powerful guru that under him, even the demons became qualified enough to challenge Brahma. See, that was how powerful this guru was. He could elevate even the demons and make them capable of going and threatening Brahma himself. So that is Shukracharya. And he was the guru of Yayati. And Shukracharya was also the father of a very beautiful lady. Her name was Devayani. And Yayati, he fell in love with Devayani and he wanted to marry Devayani. So, of course, but Shukracharya is a very powerful person and he's also his guru. So he's approaching it very carefully. He's going and telling Shukracharya, can you let me marry your daughter? And he's saying, I promise that I will honor her and I will treat her with respect and I will always keep her trust. So he makes all these promises. That's what we all do, na? Whenever we want something really bad, we we will, whatever you want, we will say yes, okay. So that's what he's doing, okay. But Yayati had a weakness that will become apparent eventually, but over time, he becomes restless and that's not enough. He wants more, he wants something else. And Devayani has a very beautiful friend. Her name is Sarmishta. And because it is her friend, they have met each other and Yayati has seen Sarmishta, spoken to her, and he falls for her. See, this is how the human mind, it works. But then this is not just breaking the trust of Devayani, but it is also breaking a promise, because he made a promise to his guru. And how can he break a promise made to a guru, which is such a horrible thing to do, right? So Shukracharya is angry, of course, that he broke his daughter's heart, but he's even more angry that, he accepted me as a guru and he made me a promise and is breaking a promise made to a guru, which is not cool, right? And so he curses Yayati. He says, "You fool, you have lost your mind and you have become a slave to your senses. So I'm cursing you that you're going to lose your youth and you're going to become old at once." So what happens? Overnight, Yayati's body ages. Overnight, Yayati becomes a very old guy. White hair, and he can feel his strength all fading away. And suddenly he can feel all his joints are aching, the typical symptoms of very old age. Now he is struck by shame and sorrow, not because he just broke the promise, but because he can see now what has happened. I become so old. And so then he goes. Now this part of the story, there are a couple of different interpretations. So I'm just picking one which makes sense in this context. But of course, there are some other authors who have given a slightly different interpretation. But the one that makes most sense here is he goes to Shukracharya and he tells him, I acknowledge I made a mistake, I made a blunder, but you gave me a curse and I think it's very extreme. And is there somehow I can escape this curse? Is there somehow you can help me escape this curse? And Shukracharya says, see, a curse is a curse. There is no escaping. But I can, provide you a workaround. So this is the part where the interpretations are different. Some interpretations, they just say that Yayati himself, tried to do this workaround, whereas some interpretations say that he went to Shukracharya and Shukracharya told him about this possible workaround, but it doesn't matter. So he's looking for a workaround. What is that workaround? Workaround is, he says, Shukracharya says that if one of your sons, if they can give up their youth for you, and if they can take your old age, that is the only way you can personally escape from this curse. Yayati had at least 2 sons, from what I can tell, reading the scriptures. He may have had more, I don't know, but at least 2 sons he had. So he's shamelessly approaching his sons, and he's approaching his sons and he's saying, "Oh dear child, I am not satisfied with all the pleasures that have been arranged by your maternal grandfather." See, shamelessly, his opening statement himself is so shameless, because he first says that all the pleasures were arranged by your maternal grandfather, which is Shukracharya. And he's the one, he says, has arranged all the pleasures that he has had so far. And he's also saying he's not satisfied, And the most shameless part comes later. He says, with your youth, I can enjoy for a few more years. Now see the level of how the consciousness goes really low based on you becoming a victim to your senses. That is the problem. That is why Krishna has been so categorical in being disciplined. Navadvare dehi, where he says how we have to have control over those senses. So as always, Yayati first goes to his elder son, because, there is this belief that the elder son would always be more responsible. They will be, more caring. So he goes to him. He says, "Yes, Dad, I love you, but I also love my own youth." So I'm very sorry, but I cannot take your old age. It's not happening. Okay. Then Yayati goes to his younger son, Puru. And he asks the same question to his younger son, but then he was not expecting it, because the younger son is even more young, right? But the younger son has no hesitation. He just kneels and he bows down and he says, "Oh Father, of course, your joy is my joy. I will gladly take your old age. You can take my youth." See, he was an elevated soul. So he says, "Take it. Take my youth. Big deal." And Yayati still shamelessly accepts it. And he gives his old age to his younger son. So now Yayati is again young, and what does he do? What does he do with that youth now? He goes to his palace, more enjoyments, more fun, more parties. You see? Now the story proceeds, and the story is like this. The story says that after 1,000 years of such sensual indulgence, because in those, it was a different yuga, people lived really long lives. So in that yuga, and he was now very young because he got his son's youth. So after 1,000 years of sensual indulgence, one fine day, the realization comes to Yayati, it just comes, that I am not yet satisfied. So he's been now enjoying his new youth and all of that for now 1,000 years. And one fine day, the realization just dawns on him. He just looks at himself and he says, what is this? I'm not yet satisfied. I'm not even happy and I'm not even peaceful. You see? And then the aha moment comes. And he now suddenly realizes the futility of his actions. So some people have to take the long cut. Lakshmiji is not here, but in our south, it's a very, very often quoted thing by our elders. Elders will always say this to young people, They will say, the really smart person is a person who learns from other people's mistakes. And they say the average person is a person who will learn from their own mistake. And he says the hopeless person is a person who doesn't learn even from their own mistake. You see? So Yayati was almost borderline hopeless because it took him like 1,000 years of mistakes. But somehow he still, borderline, he comes back and he says, I totally figured it out. And so the story, what is it illustrating? That his renunciation, rajasic renunciation, because he didn't want to do his rightful duties because it was not comfortable. He wanted comfort. He wanted pleasure. And that was causing him to abandon what was right, abandon the rightful duties, rightful actions. So that is a classic example of rajasic. See, he cannot go and say, I'm renouncing. What are you renouncing? You see, I'm renouncing the duties of my kingdom. He can, in today's world, this is how people portray things. They will do all sort of stuff and they'll project it as if it's a very, big-hearted thing. I did it for them. So that he could have done it, but Krishna already has a lesson ready. Krishna says that is rajasic renunciation. You are only focused on your comfort. So you disregarding your duties, you disregarding your rightful actions was actually wrong, because it's not ever going to give you positive results. The lesson again is, those who abandon rightful actions and duties because they are difficult or not comfortable, they will never experience spiritual growth. Because that rajasic renuncer is caught in a self-defeating cycle. Because all the time it's going to be avoiding something difficult, the situation is going to get more difficult. See, every time you neglect your duty because it is difficult, your situation will get more difficult. And then you will be avoiding even more. It's a cycle. And eventually you are totally in a hopeless situation. And but why do people do that? This is the whole, because they don't understand this whole science of spiritual evolution, and they don't understand the very simple lesson Krishna gave earlier of Shreya and Preya. We will revisit it again a little later. This is what I reminded you previously also. It is relatively easy to choose good over bad, but it is tricky to choose good over pleasant. Because everything that is pleasant is not good, and everything that is good is not pleasant. Like jalebi will taste very pleasant, very sweet, very aromatic, but it's not good, correct? So you need to be able to choose. But the neem and turmeric ball that we ask Kriya Yogis to have, that is not pleasant, but it's a conscious choice. where we choose Shreya over Preya. And then Krishna goes to tamasic renunciation, which is one step even more hopeless. So Krishna is saying people who abandon their duties, who abandon their rightful action based on ignorance or delusion. See, at least comfort, discomfort, there is some discernment involved there. But delusion means you are so stubborn that even if Krishna stands in front of you and says what you are doing is not right, it's not going to make sense to you. I'll tell you the example and then it will make more sense. What was the best example, of tamasic renunciation? That's the story in Mahabharata that we are all familiar, the most popular story. Our friend Dhritarashtra, the blind king Dhritarashtra. There was a time when he was not really doing his duty. He was not really doing what is rightful action. He was letting it all in the hands of Duryodhana. Right? In a way, he could have projected that I am renouncing. I'm renouncing my kingly things. I'm renouncing it so that my son can. Well, was it really renouncement? Even if it was a tamasic renouncement. Why? Because it was based entirely on blind attachment. Blind attachment to his son, regardless of how adharmic his son was, how evil his son was. So Dhritarashtra being physically blind was a symbolism. It was symbolic of his spiritual blindness, where he could not see in the true sense. And so his acts were all driven by that blindness, attachment and delusion. And as you know, all the horrible things that happened in Mahabharata, the root cause was not Duryodhana. The root cause was Dhritarashtra. He was the king. How dare Duryodhana do anything adharmic if the king did what was right? That is the whole story here. So, in the Bhagavata Purana, there is an further explanation on what is the dharma of a renunciate. So I'll give you the number. It is Bhagavad Purana 1.2.9. You can go read it yourself. There it clearly says that the purpose of dharma is liberation. The purpose of dharma is not just to gain wealth or comforts. And wealth should serve the higher purpose of dharma. So wealth should always be a means. Wealth should never be the end. And sense enjoyment can never be the goal. So that is what we have been discussing so far. Like what Yayati did was all sense enjoyment. See, so when Shri Krishna speaks about renouncing unrighteous actions and attachment to results, he is pointing to the balanced spiritual practice of performing rightful actions which are aligned with dharma without any expectations. That is the formula. Very straightforward formula. And Krishna is assuring us that when we start doing this, it will have a purifying effect. So it is going to purify the consciousness. It is going to increase our sattva guna. And things are only going to get better and better. And then Shri Krishna is re-emphasizing nishkama karma, which is the discipline of selfless action without attachment to fruits. And he says that is the ideal path for attaining liberation. So there is a Upanishad called Isha Upanishad. We have referred to it in the previous sessions also. And so in that Upanishad, the first two slokas, they guide us on two paths towards spiritual fulfillment. So you can yourself go read it. Is it Isha Upanishad, Sloka 1 and Sloka 2. And why I am taking those two slokas here is the context is, those two slokas, the first and second sloka, they give two paths to liberation and freedom. And the first path is the path of deep knowledge that encourages seekers to understand the nature of Atman and then abandon worldly desires entirely, so that they can realize the self. It is very similar to the Sankhya philosophy, where the Sankhya says, give up everything, renounce. It's a very, very popular shloka. Some of you may have already heard it, and we also referred it in a previous chapter also. It says, Isha vasyamidam sarvam yatkincham jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita ma grudaha kasya sviddanam. It says, all this, whatever that moves or doesn't move in the universe, it is all pervaded or covered by the Lord and is truly enjoyed by those who have renounced everything. So do not covet anybody's wealth. That last part is just another addendum, but the core part is renunciation. But however, even in that Upanishad, they recognize that all seekers cannot immediately reach that state. All seekers cannot follow that path of knowledge. So then it compassionately offers another path. And that path comes in the very next sloka of the same Upanishad, where it says, Kurvanne veha karmani jiji visheshachattam samaha evam tvayi nanyate tosti na karma lipyate nare. It says, should one wish to live 100 years on this earth, they should live performing actions, which is karma, and performing it with detachment. So the same thing. So they are using slightly different words. What Krishna said, perform actions without attachment. Here they say perform actions with detachment. The same thing. If they do like that, then they can even enjoy 100 years on earth without incurring any karmic bondage, without having the soul get into bondage. So that is the second path. If you see, as you can rightly see, this is exactly how this 18th chapter started, where we started discussing about the path of Sankhya, the path of Mimamsa, and how Krishna brings a middle ground. And if you look at Isha Upanishad, the first two slokas, they have the same kind of contrast. But now if you read those two slokas, they will make a deeper appeal to you, they will make sense to you, because now you have the context of these teachings of Shri Krishna. See? Otherwise, if you just randomly go and read these two verses, they will sound contradictory. Because the first sloka says renounce everything, the second sloka says you can live happily by doing rightful actions. And then you will be scratching your head on, how can they contradict just the previous sloka? No, but this is the whole context. So it's very beautiful. There is a very key message, very strong message that I want to bring out here is, first of all, whatever actions are being asked from us, whatever actions the scriptures, Krishna and Upanishads, they say that we should do even without detachment, we should not do them just as rituals. Like for example, in the morning, get up and do some puja. It shouldn't just be a ritual. Oh, at 5:30 I have to ring my bell 10 times. At 5:45 I have to rotate my diya 3 times. See, so that it shouldn't become just that ritual, because that gives you nothing. Yeah, it gives you a little bit of discipline, but that is not the point. The point is, we need to understand that they are tools for purifying our heart, body and minds. So the purification has to be the key. Aisa nahi ki, in the morning you have done your revolutions and rotations and gantis and whatever you want to do, and then you get out of your house and suddenly you are a different person. Then you can do whatever you want. You can lie and you can cheat and you can do everything, and then next morning I'm anyways going to go back and do my puja. So the point is, the purification aspect should never be forgotten. That should always be the goal. Now, there is another very strong message here. It is very relevant to each one of us. That strong message is, we should never lead an idle or aimless life, because such inactivity and negligence, it will lead to negative karma. Oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling up to the mark. So I'll just go lie down on the couch. I'm not going to do anything for the next 2 days, next 3 days. No, that is getting us into negligence. That is getting us into idleness. And the message is very strong. The message is, that also causes us, knowingly or unknowingly, to ignore some of our rightful actions, some of our duties, and that also causes karmic bondage. That also is negative karma. So pay attention, be careful. That whole sulking business is also creating negative karma. Very important. Okay, so we now spoke about do your duty, do rightful actions. So how exactly should I do my duties? The Upanishads are recommending that do it selflessly, without attachment, or without expectation of personal gain. See, expectation as such, that word, there is nothing wrong. The problem is expecting what? Because some people hook on to the word. So if a mother says, beta, I really want you to, be successful, the beta shouldn't look at the mother and say, why are you having expectations? So that you shouldn't latch on to the word. The word is not the devil. The devil is expectation to what? Expectations to fruits that you can enjoy. Expectations to something for you, for your enjoyment, your sense, your pleasure, your glory, your fame. That is what you have to be careful of. And that kind of detachment is what is going to take us more towards purification of our heart. And that itself will open the door to spiritual wisdom, is the whole message. You have to trust me on that. The more your purification, the more divine knowledge automatically will start making sense. The more aha moments you will have, the more the universe will reveal. You see it, and you have to just take it on good faith, because I'm saying this out of my own experience, and also based on all the great saints and great scholars and great teachers who have all said the same thing. There was one very great saint in Bharat. His name was Swami Shivananda. He was a yogi, very great yogi. And he emphasizes that this verse, the second verse of Isha Upanishad that we just read, he says that is clearly guiding seekers towards the path of action, which is traditionally known as Karma Yoga. He says those who find the ideas of complete renunciation beyond their reach, in other words, those who find the path of Sankhya and the path of Sannyasa beyond their reach, they can still achieve spiritual progress through disciplined Nishkama Karma. That is coming from Shivananda. So, and he says, just not doing anything is not ever going to be beneficial. Okay, because there is a power and clarity in the word eva. Eva means certainly. So in Sanskrit, it highlights the necessity of consistent, purposeful action without expectation. That is very, very important. So Shivananda says, you have to live actively. You have to have an active life. You have to live dutifully. And you have to engage in righteous actions regularly. And you have to engage in service selflessly. Through this approach, he says, you gradually become free from the bonds of karma. He doesn't say that you avoid bad karma. He says you also gradually become free from the bonds of karma. All the bondages that we have already created. It will help us get free from that. There are other Upanishads also, like Taittiriya Upanishad, and they also contain similar teachings. They will talk about two paths. I'm just giving you FYI. We don't have to go into depth there. But the path of jnana and the path of karma, they are provided in other Upanishads also. The message is the same. And then you all know Vedas, the revered saint who compiled the Vedas. That is why we call him Vedas. He also carefully considered these both paths, and after thoughtful consideration, he is explaining to his son, the great Shukadeva Goswami. So he is explaining to his son that two paths, one path towards karma and the other path away from karma. What is the path away from karma? Sannyasa. So he's saying these are two paths, one path of karma and one path which goes away from karma. They form the foundation of spiritual progress. Both paths ultimately go towards liberation, although the path of selfless action is particularly more effective and more accessible. Okay, so that is the message from the great Vedas. In practical terms, what does that mean? It means just accept and embrace your lives, wherever you are in life, accept it, embrace it. Whatever duties that have been given to you, accept it, embrace it. Do you remember the famous quote from Rumi we quoted earlier on? It said, the quote itself won't make sense unless you have this knowledge. The quote just says, when you accept your troubles, the doors will open. But it sounds very cryptic. What does it mean? But now this, whatever we have learned so far in the 18th chapter, that gives the beautiful context to that. Be in a mindset of acceptance, embrace your life's responsibilities, approach every day with sincerity, compassion, always be dedicated to service, selfless action. That is the essence of Karma Yoga. True essence of Karma Yoga. And, and that is going to take us towards liberation in a very beautiful, accessible, effective way. We don't have to really do anything extra special. So ultimately, that sloka from the Upanishad, it is encouraging that we have to live purposefully, act dutifully, and serve lovingly. Make sense? So now let us see what we have said earlier on, where Krishna said that you can never force knowledge. Krishna said unsolicited advice is not effective. He said don't do that. So what else? There was this question that many people asked. What to do in my family itself. There are people who don't follow the path, who don't believe, who don't have faith, who don't this, blah, 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 blah. And we said, but the answer is not in trying to preach to them. The answer is not in forcing anything. The answer is not in, just giving them jnana. What was the answer? Does anybody remember? What was the answer? Okay, one hand, two hands. Okay, let's see. Yes, Chitraji, what was the answer?
You lead by example.
Excellent. Please applause. That was the most accurate answer. That's what Krishna said. Krishna said, you lead by example. Now look at Krishna's life. That's exactly what Krishna has been doing. Although he gives us so much of knowledge, he has led by example. His entire life was an example of Nishkama Karma Yoga. In every stage of his divine life, his divine journey, he was in constant manifestation of performing duties selflessly. When he was a little boy, cowherd boy in Vrindavan, he fulfilled the simple but yet sacred duty of caring for cows. There he was showcasing humility and purity. That's one of the most humblest jobs that anybody can do, just taking care of cows, cleaning them, feeding them. And then he encounters and gains victory over Kamsa. That illustrates his duty as a Kshatriya. Because he was actually a Kshatriya, although he was living the life of a cowherd boy. So he did that duty as well. And then he keeps talking about Pariprashnena, Pranipatena, Sevaya. He did that himself. He accepted Sandipani as his guru. Did Krishna need a guru? Krishna is the author of the Vedas. But he's leading by example. Although he is Krishna, he still goes, accepts a guru, serves him. And then when the Kauravas and Pandavas, they are in conflict, he goes there as a peacemaker. Shantidut. There he is performing his duty as a statesman. A statesman means it's like a bureaucrat. That's his job. He is trying to bring peace between two opposing parties. There he could have just said, I'll flip my fingers and the Kauravas will disappear. He's not getting into that mode. He's performing his duty. At that time, his duty was the duty of a statesman. So he's going and performing that duty. On the battlefield, he's serving Arjuna not just as a charioteer, but as a friend and guide. Isn't that such a, so his duty as a teacher, his duty as a friend. As you can see, at every stage in his life, Krishna is led by example by performing Nishkama Karma. What is Krishna going to gain by being Arjuna's charioteer? What is Krishna going to gain by, being a statesman, trying to bring peace? You see, that is Nishkama, selfless, not for him. So we have to look at all of that. But what people do, they are busy counting how many girlfriends he had. See, this is the problem. The problem is wherever we focus, wherever, attention goes, energy flows. So if attention goes to girlfriends, then the energy will flow there only. Kahan se? Where are you going to get divine knowledge or upliftment or spiritual elevation? So Shri Krishna was a personification of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, beautifully conveyed by Sutta Goswami to the assembled sages. So there, when he is explaining, when he is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, he is talking about Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, and how he is the central point, ultimate objective of all spiritual, religious endeavors that are prescribed in the scriptures. These are very beautiful slokas. I would recommend that you read it and try to memorize it. Maybe recite once in a while. It's 1.2.28 and 1.2.29 from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vasudeva para Veda, Vasudeva para Makaha, Vasudeva para Yoga, Vasudeva para Kriyaha, Vasudeva param Jnanam, Vasudeva param Tapaha, Vasudeva paro Dharmo, Vasudeva paragatihi. Beautiful. It says, in the revealed scriptures, Vedas, the ultimate object of knowledge is Vasudeva. The purpose of performing sacrifice, which is Makaha, is Vasudeva. Yoga is for realizing Vasudeva. All fruitful activities which are Kriya, they are all ultimately rewarded by Vasudeva. Vasudeva is supreme knowledge, Jnanam. Vasudeva is supreme austerity, Tapah. Vasudeva is the supreme religion, Dharma. Vasudeva is the supreme goal of life, Gati. So they have brought everything into those two slokas. Very beautiful. I think we should actually, anybody who wants to deepen their bhakti should read these two slokas a couple of times. And then Shri Krishna is advising that we should avoid the pitfall of the same thing. He's advising pitfall of likes or dislikes. So please don't fall into the trap of attachment and aversion and all the time running between these two. So see, because in modern times it is very relevant. In modern times everybody wants, everything has to be instant. Instant coffee, instant pleasure, instant everything. Time hi nahi hai kisi cheez ke liye. That is why nowadays the most popular form of media is also called reels. It has to be like, tell whatever you want to tell me in 40 seconds so that I can forget it in 4 seconds, So that is the modern times, where gratification, immediate, and our choices are dictated by that. There is one video that says some Acharya is explaining the path of liberation. You see how long it is. Oh, it is 1 hour. We are like, browse. What else is there interesting, Then they will see some other video that says, something else, but it is only like 1 minute long. Oh, I will watch that now. You see? So it is very relevant. It is very relevant in modern times where we are, running between attachment, aversion without even realizing it is dictating our decisions. And so Krishna says, be careful. We already discussed this in chapter 3. So I'm repeating it here because it is important and it is fitting in the narrative we have already gone through. That is the whole thing of chapter 3 we spoke, where Katha Upanishad, we had quoted it at that time, where it said, Shreyasya preyasya manushya meta. You remember that? That is how the sloka started. Where it says, the good and the pleasant, they both come to a person. And the wise, they will discriminate between them. The wise will choose the good, Shreya. Whereas the ignorant will always choose the pleasant, which is Preya. Why they choose Preya? Because that gives immediate sense gratification, that gives immediate pleasure. But if we can understand this, then we ourselves can escape from that trap. So next time we are choosing to watch a particular video. I'm choosing video as an example because that is the most relevant, most common example, because everybody spends so many hours on their mobile phones these days. So every now and then it is like flick, browse. What can I watch? And so let us now not have aversion to longer audios or videos just because they are long. That's my message. So again, Shri Krishna is clarifying that true renunciation is not just abstaining from physical activity, but it is abstaining from ego, attachment, the false notion of you being the doer. So it is not that should I do or should I not do? It is that how should I do? When you do. But don't cling to that, I did. Now suddenly I am important, I am special. That is what is renunciation. Are you able to let go of that I? Are you able to let go of that ego? That is the whole point, again and again. So Krishna has already explained, but he will say later that all actions are facilitated by multiple factors. He's going to remind us again that why you are not the doer. We think we are the doer, but we are not, because there are many factors involved in any action that we take. That will come in the immediate next set of slokas. So before we go there, let us do a little bit of introspection again. We can deeply reflect on what we have learned. There are some common misconceptions I would like to clarify first, quickly. First misconception: spirituality means you have to give up all worldly pursuits. Krishna very clearly says false. Spirituality means you have to just give up attachment. Guruji, I have to go to work to make money. Are you telling me that I should not go to work? No, go to work. But don't go to work thinking, more work means more money, so I will work more. That attachment is the problem. Second misconception: if it is uncomfortable, don't do it. This is what a lot of new age gurus will tell. No, false, because whether you should do or not do something should not depend on how comfortable or uncomfortable it is. It should depend on how much it is aligned with rightful actions, how much it is aligned with dharma. If it is aligned with dharma, do it even if it is uncomfortable. If it is comfortable and aligned with dharma, even better. Do it. Okay. Don't have aversion to comfort also. Krishna doesn't say never do anything comfortable. Krishna says let comfort not be the basis of what you do or don't do. Third misconception: I can do nothing as a way of escaping any kind of karmic bondage. Krishna says good try. It's not going to work because impossible. Krishna says total inaction is impossible. Even if you breathe, there is bad karma. Even if you think, there is bad karma. So that is a misconception. Fourth misconception: no matter what I do, it will always generate some karma, because that is how Sankhya philosophy will project it. See, the problem is in today's world, we have access to limitless knowledge. We have access to but not everything comes with the right context. Not everything comes labeled correctly. Some saint will have some YouTube video where they will say that, every action creates bondage. We read that and then we say, oh, no, this is conflicting with Nishkama Karma because Krishna says perform actions. You see the problem. So that is why I am clarifying that misconception which says all actions generate karma. That is the Sankhya way of philosophy, but Krishna clarified and Krishna said Nishkama Karma will not create karmic bondage. So if the action is Nishkama, then it's not going to create bondage. The fifth misconception: spiritual progress means I have to do something very extraordinary. I have to stand on one leg, or I have to hang on one hand, and all that crazy things, or I have to fast for 100 days. So nothing like that. This is a very powerful teaching Krishna has given. What Krishna says: even ordinary duties, ordinary tasks, if they are performed, what should be extraordinary is not the action, he says. What should be extraordinary is your consciousness. What should be extraordinary is your intent. The action. That is why he led by example. He was just cleaning the cows and taking them to feed, but even that, he says, can be uplifting. So, and that will take us towards spiritual evolution. And then finally, let's quickly look at the psychological journey of a karma yogi. Because now I hope you're all convinced that Nishkama Karma and the Karma Yoga is the most effective path. Because of that, I want to just quickly talk about the three modes once again. What is the tamasic stage? Tamasic stage means we will try to escape. We will try to make excuse. Because just like Dhritarashtra, for him his blindness was an excuse. He will use that as an excuse and say, oh, I am blind, I am so, bechara. Like, if you are so sorry for being blind, why did you accept to be a king? So the tamasic stage will be if you find yourself escaping, if you find yourself trying not to do something that is supposed to be done, you should know that we are just trying to make excuses that inaction is somehow good. That is not good. It is delusional. We have to catch ourselves. The second stage is rajasic stage, where, okay, we are now not escaping. No, we are trying to do what is right, but it has to be comfortable. Then we will do. If it is not comfortable, I will not do. So that's the next step. And there Krishna says that is rajasic. The sattvic stage is you engage in rightful action consistently, and you always do what needs to be done, not because it is comfortable, but because it is the right thing to do. And if you don't do something, if you avoid something, it is not because it is uncomfortable, but because it is not the right thing, it is not dharmic. Then you are in the sattvic mode. So it is a self-check. We have to keep a check on ourselves, on which stage we are. Every day we will have a mix. Every day, sometimes we may be in the rajasic mode, sometimes we may be in the tamasic mode, and so that we have to, like there was this one Shishya who used to tell his guru, Guruji, you are everything for me, I have surrendered to you, and I will do anything for you. And also Guruji once says, go to that other ashram and bring me some fresh flowers. A very simple task he gives him, because I need it for my puja. And then after an hour or so, the Guruji comes and says the Shishya is still sitting on the cot. And he says, what happened? I told you to go get the flower. And he says, Guruji, but it was raining, very cold outside. Guruji says, so he's like, but just an hour ago you told me you will do anything for me. So yes, I will do anything for you as long as it is comfortable. You see? So we have to catch ourselves. We have to catch ourselves when we are getting into these modes, and that is how we can elevate ourselves. So in the next set of verses, Shri Krishna is going to talk about, I included that in this section only to give you a glimpse of what is going to come in the next set. So in the next set, Krishna will start talking about the 5 essential factors that are necessary for any action. So it's going to be very, very empowering once more. So with that, I will stop talking. Hare Krishna. I'll open the floor for questions, comments, inputs. Did anybody have anything to say? Yes, Sandeep ji?
So you were mentioning that the daily rituals which we do should be done with the right intention. So how can we go about it? Like, how do we think in better way while we do that? Like, we will just give it up to all these, we will give it up to God and just recite the name without any...
Tell me an example, like for example, like what do you do every day?
I do like Gayatri Japa 108 times every day.
Excellent. So now, why do you do that Gayatri Japa?
It is prescribed in the tradition that I should do it because I am wearing the sacred thread.
Exactly. That is exactly what Krishna says. You have to now rise above. So Krishna says, because that becomes ritualistic then. So you're doing it just because it's a ritual, which is still not tamasic, but it's not yet, So for Gayatri, for example, Gayatri is a very, very powerful mantra. We have to first understand the meaning of Gayatri itself. It's a very powerful mantra. And when you say it, you have to say it with that awareness that, because Gayatri mantra, it is at the end of the day, Dhimahi, like you want to like prachodayat, like Diyo Yona prachodayat. So you want to like enlighten. It is asking for. So what is the goal? The goal is, are you getting divine wisdom? Is your dhim, is your consciousness, getting enlightened? But enlightened with what? What is the goal? Enlightened means what? With what? It's the acknowledgement of the divinity, is the acknowledgement of the supremacy of whoever is in front of you. That's your Lord, that's your God, right? So when you are doing the Gayatri mantra, is your love increasing? That should be the goal. The goal should not be, I was supposed to do 108, did I do 110 or did I do 106? Then it becomes just ritualistic. You can do 3 times and still you can be lost in ecstasy. So that is the whole purpose. That is what Krishna is saying. Do it with consciousness, do it with awareness. And let the intent be something pure. Because some people, I don't know if you are aware, but Gayatri Mantra is also used in Tantra. And in Tantra, they use Gayatri Mantra for manifestation. So if you pronounce it in a certain way, if you recite it in a certain manner, it is an extremely potent and extremely powerful manifestation mantra. But if you are using that mantra for manifestation, then it is not really serving its complete purpose. That is not nishkama. Correct? So that is the message. The message is do it, but then do it with the right intent, with the right goal. That will take us towards Krishna is the message. I hope that answers your question, Sandeep ji. Okay, if no other questions, comments. Deepa is looking a little thoughtful. Everything is okay, Deepa ji?
No, I was just thinking you have a rightful intention and an action, but the opposite person may not have or may not interpret it that way. I was just thinking on it, but you still continue to do the rightful action.
Yeah, I mean that's not our business, no? We cannot control our own self, our own mind. How can we control the other person? So, yeah. And in other words, if you backtrack what you said, that is a perfect recipe for rajasic renunciation. Because what you are saying is, if the other person reacts in a certain way, whatever makes them react in a certain way, that's what I'm going to do. That's what it boils down to then. Correct? So that is in the rajasic mode. If you want to go to sattvic mode doesn't say be insensitive. Sattvic mode only says be aware of your intention. Be aware of what is your goal, what is your intention. आप किसी को मस्का मारने के लिए बोल रहे हो या or are you just trying to get the right things done? You see, that is the whole message.
Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you all once again. Very grateful for your continued support and association. And see you all in the next session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.